Here we go, it's coming up. Just to let everyone know, we are recording the presentation for use by the Institute. So if we do have people talking on it at the Q&A at the end, we'll stop recording at that point.
I chair PRC, and by way of introduction, I've been associated with the activities now for far more years than perhaps I care to admit. I am a former president of the Institute and have been chairing PRC, which is the Professional Registration Committee, since 2016. This presentation includes basically an overview of all the issues associated with measurement and control, whether that be straight membership, whether it be registration, whether it be the process, the benefits, and at the end there's a little bit about CPD. Some of you will have heard a part of this presentation before in various formats, and some of you, for some parts of it, it will be new. Others of you will have not heard very much about this before. The one thing I should say is that in the last 3 weeks, we have received the new Engineering Council regulations. So while in principle, the detail of this presentation is correct, if you are actually ever in a position to go through the process, some of the detail on some of the forms may be marginally different in a few weeks' time than they are currently. But if there's any issues with that, please contact the membership office. Equally, some of the slides are very wordy, and that's in a part is done deliberately. A, it's to make sure I don't forget anything, and B, it's available to anyone, and it probably answers most people's questions most of the time. I have no intention of going through every slide, every last word of every slide, but what I will do is pick out the major benefits or the key points of each slide. And as Dave said, it would help us enormously if we could have the questions at the end. Well, in actual fact, in a lot of ways, it's quite obvious why people should join the Institute. Clearly, there's an opportunity for professional development, and if you become registered, you will are eligible for registration. You will have qualifications which are internationally recognised, and within professional development, there are opportunities to get advice, support, for your professional development, and that can take the form of mentoring. It can take the form of joining in technical sessions, joining in with local section activities, and a whole raft of things besides, as well as national lectures and the like. As far as recognition and contribution is concerned, clearly being a member of an institute or a corporate member of the institute gives you post-nominal letters, which says something about you to prospective employers. The Institute offers the opportunity for people who are suitably qualified to become registered functional safety engineers and REXE. And of course, the Institute runs a number of special interest groups covering a whole raft of the application of measurement and control, from pure measurement to all the way through to things like cybersecurity. The opportunity to attend lectures, get involved with local sections, attend exhibitions is all part of a networking opportunity. And of course, anyone that's a member, and even to a certain extent, some members of the general public have access to archive materials in some form or another. Membership of the Institute covers all grades of professional standing, from student all the way through to fellow. The two grades which are corporate members are EngTech and InstMC. The eligibility criteria for members and fellows, well, for members, it's to be working at a level that would be expected of a graduate and have either an honours degree or, I will actually say, a combination of other qualifications which are considered to be acceptable, and that effectively is equivalent in some way, shape or form. But the thing to remember is not everyone that's a member of InstMC is actually involved in a technical role. And as we all know, engineering in particular, there has always been a traditional migration from engineering, pure engineering, into management at some people's stage, at some later stages in people's careers. For fellow, it's basically the senior members of the institute. In order to become a fellow, you don't need to be a member, but you need to have the same. You need to satisfy the eligibility criteria for fellow, but also have significant experience in measurement control and automation, a structured approach to your ongoing professional development. Plus, you've made a significant contribution that is recognised outside your sphere of interest. And what I mean by that, it could be that you're part of a special interest group and you're making a significant contribution to that, or you are actively involved in things like national standards. Some of you will have seen the term measurement and control previously, and we've recently changed it to measurement, control, automation and associated technologies. And in part, that's actually to reflect the wide variation and the wide application where we see the measurement, control and automation, and to reflect the range of employment environments of our membership. Going on to associate members, working at technician levels, perhaps have completed a formal apprenticeship scheme, but at least within the equivalent of NVQ3. Affiliate, we have previously have a lot more affiliates than we currently have, but it's a rate of membership which is available to just about anyone that has an interest in our activities and an interest in measurement, control and automation. And as you can appreciate, that can be wide and varied. And of course, there's a slide right at the beginning, the background slide. Student membership is available to any individual who is studying for a first degree, diploma or certificate in engineering. And of course, in that case, student membership is actually free. As I've said, wide range of applications of measurement and control and automation. And that's just to name but a few. I think if we went back and wrote down everything we could ever dream of in terms of where people are employed in these kind of activities, we'd probably spread over 2 or 3 pages. What's available for members? There are publications, which is the measurement and control, which now is published by Sage. There's Precision, which is the coffee table style magazine. There's regular monthly newsletters, which comes out via email. And I think, Jane, you're responsible for doing that. And then, of course, there's the website where there's online archive material and news and events of basically national lectures or local section activities. And there's a fair section on professional development and particularly CPD and qualifications. I've mentioned special interest groups, and on the right hand side of the slide, you can see our current ones. People who are involved in SIGs, as they're called, are both members and people outside from the Institute who have a standing in these areas. And it's an opportunity to collaborate with and learn from others and network in these specialist areas. So what we've all come for really, professional education and accreditation activities. These are actually managed, monitored by 2 particular committees. The Professional Registration Committee, which I chair, is responsible for the direction and management of the Institute's membership and registration activities. And as you can see, there's a list there. Some of the most important things are that we are responsible for ensuring compliance with our own procedures and Engineering Council codes of practice, ensuring that we behave consistently, that our actions are traceable and are repeatable. We have a regular auditing of our activities in some way, shape or form. Perhaps not a strict auditing process as some of you may have seen in perhaps a very regimented and organisation, but it's an ongoing process. It's a rolling process where we try and learn from one application to the next. It's called what went well, what did we have a problem with, what can we do, and what do other institutes do. We oversee the assessment and accreditation of employers' initial professional development, and we're also we liaise with the Engineering Council and other committees of the Institute. One of the things that we've been doing recently is something called endorsement of employers' training schemes and short courses. And it's something that may be attractive to some of you, particularly where you're putting together a short course that's going to be used either for a third party or within your own organisation, where you're looking for, if you like, an expert input to your course. And anyone that goes through the endorsement process has the ability to use the the Institute's logo on their presentation material. PRC currently comprises 14 experienced PR assessors, a mixture of academia and industry, and they have a wealth of experience in measurement, control and automation, and of course are supported by Layla. I did a quick straw poll about a year ago of how many years experience there existed within the members of the committee. Now, most committees have a rolling membership. You try and keep continuity by keeping the knowledge base, but at the same time you bring new blood in. And I reckoned that was in excess of 250 people years of experienced in measurement, control and automation activities that the Institute is involved with. Now, I keep saying measurement and control, and that's partly because the other expression of measurement, control and automation and associated technologies is a bit of a mouthful, so please forgive me. The other major committee is the Accreditation Committee, and they are responsible for all things associated with accreditation of principally academic courses. That's for the main university courses. And that is carrying out accreditation visits, overseeing the training and development of assessors, establishing and maintaining appropriate panels, and liaising with the Engineering Council. Currently, accreditation comprises approximately 12 experienced assessors, again a mixture from people from academia and industry, and again they have a wealth of experience, not only in the aspects of the technology, but also in the accreditation processes. Why register? And a lot of people, I guess, have asked this from time to time. For you as an individual, because we live in an environment now where people don't stay with one employer for the whole of their career, as perhaps at one time they used to, being registered says something about you, says something that to your prospective employer, you've achieved a particular standard. You have been recognised by your peers, and you have got post-nominals to reflect that. Because you're moving, you have a higher earning potential. You've demonstrated that you have a professional attitude to your prospective employer and your colleagues. And you have an enhanced status. And the example I'm going to use there is that the company I used to work for at one point would not allow any of us to put any post-nominals on our business cards. And at the time, we were dealing with a major international project. And when we went to meetings, until they actually knew who we were and what our backgrounds were, we were treated a bit like the village idiots or the filing clerk or the secretaries. It says something about you. It gives you a label, and it gives you the opportunity to be respected amongst your peers outside the organisation you work for. And the other thing that's you can actually do is sign passport applications. Chartered engineers, engineering council registrants are able to actually countersign official requests, applications for official documents. For employers, again, it's about knowing that their employees or prospective employees have been reviewed by their peers. They know that when it comes to risk and mitigation of those risks, if they have taken, if they've followed due process, they have employed competent individuals which are demonstrated by people who are registered, then they have done not everything that possibly could have done if there's a problem, but they have taken all reasonable steps. And of course, some employers actually deliberately sell the fact that they have got a number of engineering council registrants on their books. And when it comes to a customer choosing one team, they're more than likely, based upon experience, likely to select the team which has got a high propensity of engineering council registrants. Doesn't happen always, but the opportunity is there. The Institute is licensed by the Engineering Council to assess suitably qualified and experienced individuals for registration at all three levels, CEng, IEng and EngTech. This assessment is known as the professional review, and we actually have an explicit obligation to complete those reviews strictly in accordance with the Engineering Registration Code of Practice, associated guide notes and regulations, and UK spec. And we have to put procedures in place that meets the conditions of that licence, which are open, consistent, transparent and auditable. We've recently had an audit by the Engineering Council, and as far as registration was concerned, for CEng, IEng and EngTech, there were no issues with what we did, how we did it, why we did it, and our record keeping. The requirements for professional registration, and I'm not going to be specific at the moment about what is actually required for each grade. I'll come on to that later. Anyone that's going forward for registration or wants to achieve registration has to provide a formal demonstration, requires the formal demonstration and assessment that an engineer or technician has reached the defined standard for knowledge, understanding, competence and commitment, is committed to professional standards and behaviour, is committed to developing their own knowledge through undertaking CPD, and is committed to support the learning of others. The last two, every member of the Institute signs up when they first join as a member, although some individuals tend to forget that over time. As I said, professional registration is regulated by the Engineering Council in accordance with the Engineering Code of Practice and the associated regulations. The standard that a lot of us will keep talking about is defined in UK spec. And for each level of registration, there is a very specific set of requirements that says the candidate for this level of registration shall demonstrate that. And I believe there are 17 categories associated with each level of registration, albeit that I think EngTech has got one less. And it comes about because of EngTech are not expected to do one particular issue because they're unlikely to have particular seniority. In order to become a member of the Institute, in order to become a registrant, you have to first become a member of the Institute. And although that is partially a repeat of what I've just said, in addition to meeting the standards for competence, commitment, knowledge and understanding, you also have to provide details of initial professional development activities, and provide details of your continuing professional development. The best piece of advice that I can give to anybody that's applying for registration is exactly what it says there. Get some advice. It's important that when you're making an application, you sell yourself. And we generally come from a culture where we're not very good at what I would describe as doing the big I am. A lot of us were brought up at a time when technical reports were written in third person passive, and there was none of I did this, I was responsible for that, etc. It's important that when you make an application for registration, you actually make the points of what you were responsible for, what you did. Because at the end of the day, it's about you demonstrating that you meet those standards. And of course, take the opportunity to talk to people, the membership office, the local sections, and other engineering council registrants. The last thing that you want to do is put an application form in without at least someone else who is used to the process actually reading through your application. So what is competence? Competence is a professional ability to carry out engineering tasks successfully and safely within a field of practice. I've talked about the 17 areas of competence. They're broadly split into 5 areas. 1 is knowledge and understanding. B is design, development, and engineering and solving engineering problems. C is responsibility, management, and leadership. And all of us do that at some point, albeit our job title may actually not reflect it. How we communicate with people and our interpersonal skills, and what we are doing to show that we are committed to the profession and the development of. What's commitment? We're required to demonstrate a personal and professional commitment to society, to the environment, and to our profession. As part of that, people coming forward for registration have to show that they have adopted a set of values and conduct that maintains and enhances the reputation of the profession. Very, very similar to other professions, whether it be in medicine and the law. And part and parcel of that is that it's about complying with codes of conduct, codes of practice, and the legal and regulatory frameworks. It's carrying out CPD activities. It's exercising responsibility in an ethical manner. It's recognising inclusivity and diversity. It's actively participating within the profession. None of that is particularly difficult. It's about being responsible for what you do and acting accordingly. For those of you who are considering applying for CEng, the standard is as defined there. Again, it's about theoretical knowledge. It's about the application of that knowledge. It's responsibility for financial aspects of the project and planning, and I'll come back to that in a minute. It's about leadership and development of other staff. It's about effective interpersonal skills. It's about understanding sustainability and the implications of your actions, and it's about a commitment to the professional engineering values. Some people will actually say to me that I don't have any responsibility for financial and planning activities on a project because I'm an engineer and I do engineering. Oh, yes, you do. Because when you actually start out on a project, you either get an estimate or you are allocated a number of hours and a group of resources to achieve a particular target. Equally, you are given a period of time to complete that task, including milestones which you must achieve because you need to interact with other disciplines involved in that project or other people involved in that project. You have a personal commitment to deliver your aspect within the allocated resources available, whatever they are. And at the same time, you have an obligation to be able to report how you're doing against the budget you've got. While you may actually not be involved in the overall project budget, because there may be many people involved in this, you have an active contribution to make and an active responsibility to deliver within budget. We've talked about the 17 competences. They're actually listed within UK spec, and our application forms reflect that exactly. And they're actually called A1 to A5. And if you look at Form B, you will see that Section A is A1 and A2, Section B is B1 to B3, and by the time you get down to Section E, it's E1 to E5. It's important that anyone coming through for registration can actually demonstrate a competence in each of the 17 areas. However, while an individual may have more experience in one area, it is recognised that provided the applicant meets the threshold defined in UK spec, they may actually not have too much experience in that area, in one area or another, but as long as they understand and as long as they appreciate that they need to do some development to enhance that their experience going forward, that can be offset to a certain extent against a strong showing in another area of competence. There's not a lot more I can say about CEng, I guess, other than to say how you apply. Many of you will be aware that the gold standard for CEng is an accredited MEng. There aren't many people coming forward in instrumentation and measurement and control with an accredited MEng, partly because many people come into measurement and control partway through their career. They will have started out in another area of engineering, possibly not completing an MEng course, and then will have chosen to top up. And that's why there are any number of ways in which you can satisfy the qualification requirement for CEng. There are actually 15 ways of doing it at the last count, I believe. Very, very rarely do we see any more than those listed here. And of course, at the bottom, at the bottom of that list, we're now seeing people who have completed an apprenticeship, which has been integrated, where we've got a training course that's been integrated with an academic course. That will, I believe, will grow over time. There are alternative, and of course, most of the time we actually are dealing with applications who are from individuals who have got non-accredited qualifications, and those are dealt with on a case-by-case basis by the individual case panel. And what happens there is that individuals of some considerable standing take a view of the course that's been completed, the transcript of those courses, the details of what's been offered in an applicant's CV, and what has been done since they graduated in terms of formal qualifications, to determine whether or not, on the balance of probability, those individuals meet the standard for MEng. It is a judgment, but experience of the panel accommodates the wide variation of offerings that we see there. And Of course, there are alternative routes, the career-based learning, the MSc in professional engineering, a technical report route, and the Open University. We have only had one individual via the technical report route in the last 7 years, I believe. Certainly not in the time of my tenure as chair of PRC. The career-based learning option is one that we are seeing more and more. And what it actually is that individuals come to us with some academic qualifications, and the minimum requirement is a bachelor's degree, although that can be waived in certain circumstances. And individuals can demonstrate, have the opportunity of demonstrating to us that what they have done since they left an academic environment and the responsibilities they've taken on and the width and the additional courses that they've completed are equivalent to an accredited EngTech. And if someone's coming that route, in addition to filling in section A3 of the Form B, they also have to complete a technical project report. It has become very, very attractive to a number of people in the industry. And I would suggest that something like 80 to 90% of our application for registration comes through that process, via that route. Similar information about IEng. So I'm not going to read all of it. It's about an ability to apply theoretical knowledge. It's about contributing to the financial planning and time planning of projects. It's about interpersonal skills, but then it always is. It's an ability to operate and specify safe systems and work, and it's a commitment to professional engineering values. Again, everyone applying for IEng has to demonstrate that they meet the standard A1 to E5 for UK spec. Again, they have to demonstrate in all areas, all 17 areas, with the same caveat as I've said before. And interestingly, very few people are coming through the IEng route. Have come through the IEng route in recent times. It's not you are not a second-class citizen if you hold IEng. It's a qualification in its own right. And it has equal standing in some areas. You have actually shown that you have been assessed by your peers and you are viewed as being competent. The qualifications for IEng are at a lower level than they are for CEng, and the gold standard is an accredited bachelor's degree. Or on a bachelor's or honours degree in engineering, technology, science and mathematics. But of course, we're in a changing time, and over the last 20 years, things have changed. So the way Engineering Council rules are, they actually are written, they apply retrospectively. So if someone's coming forward later on in their career, but have perhaps done their qualifications at the end of in the sort of latter years of the last century, they're not precluded from being eligible for registration just because they've got the wrong letters on their course. And again, the non-accredited qualifications will be considered on a case-by-case basis. And of course, you've got the same alternatives of career-based learning, a BSc in professional engineering, the technical report, or via the Open University. And then we come to EngTech, and I would dearly love for more people to come forward to register as EngTech with the Institute. EngTechs apply proven techniques and procedures to the solution of practical engineering problems. They are a very, very valuable aspect of our society and make a very, very large contribution to the well-being of it. Again, similar categories of competence that they're required to demonstrate. And again, on this, the EngTechs will be able to demonstrate their competence in all areas listed, but it is recognised that the depth of their experience and competence will vary to the context, nature and requirement of their roles. So this is particularly where individuals are employed in a particular industry, and a lot of what they do is limited by the business of their employer. Qualifications, a technical certificate as part of a modern apprenticeship, City and Guilds higher professional diploma in engineering, or an approved level 3 NVQ. Alongside appropriate work experience. We haven't yet seen anyone that's come through with a EngTech accredited apprenticeship come through yet, but I sincerely hope that we will. I've talked about the standards. Now I'm going to talk about the process. Applicants for registration are required to submit the relevant Form B. Now, those of us who have been involved, and I guess a lot of the committee of the local section will know very well what Form B is. It's there for a purpose. It's there to enable individuals to show that they meet the required competencies. It's very, very regimented how it's presented, but then the assessment has to be very regimented in how it's completed. And they are all mapped, all the forms B, whether it's CEng, IEng, EngTech, are mapped to UK spec, and all the internal reporting and assessments are mapped to that. When we get an application, Layla and the team check the application for completeness and whether or not the applicant is eligible for the level of registration that they've applied for. On occasions, she will seek the advice of the various panels, particularly when an individual's qualifications are outside or appear to be outside of the norm. Once that application is viewed to be as complete, the individual undergoes a professional review. Stage 1 of that review is a document assessment, where the professional review assessors will consider in detail the information that's being presented via the candidate to show that they, in their view, that they meet the required standard. And this is followed by a professional review interview. The interview itself is compulsory for IEng and CEng, but it's the discretion of the Institute for EngTech. Occasionally we will interview for EngTech, but the majority of instances we won't. And there's one thing to remember, that no one should go forward for interview unless they've got a very good chance of being successful. Now, please, just because you're going forward to interview doesn't mean that it's a done deal. We've had instances where people have performed very well on paper, but when it comes to the interview, they can't or haven't, or it's not obvious that what they've presented is all their own work. So please don't take it for granted. And of course, there are individuals that have been who have joint membership with other PEIs, and they have chosen over the years to transfer their allegiance to the Institute of Measurement and Control, and we do have the opportunity to transfer their registration for them from their original PEI to InstMC. If anybody is interested, the Forms B can be downloaded from the Institute website. Again, I'm not going to go through this slide. It's fairly obvious, but it is a very structured form. key to it that all aspects are completed. And when it comes down to section F and G, it's important that your supporters actually endorse the information that you have provided in section D, because they know you better than any of us, and they're actually verifying specifically that they endorse you based upon the information that you've provided. This is a slide which describes what happens after you've made your application. The top half of the slide, which is above the word yes, is all about determining whether or not you meet the standard for knowledge and understanding. The process I've just described is assessors are appointed, they will complete the professional review, and they will then make their report to the Professional Registration Committee. The assessors do not have the power or responsibility for making the final decision on whether an applicant should be registered. They can only make a recommendation. The outcome of that decision is advised, the candidate is advised by the Institute, and also the Secretariat the Council is advised by the Secretariat. For all successful applicants, their information is subsequently registered with the Engineering Council, and ultimately you would get a certificate of registration. Clearly, we've talked about how you get registration, but then, of course, how do you keep it? Well, in order to keep your professional registration, you must maintain your membership of a UK PEI. Must be a licensed PEI, and I guess the majority of engineering institutes are. You must complete CPD activities and maintain a record in a prescribed format, and it be available for inspection should it be sought. And of course, you have to pay your annual fees. In the last 2 years, Engineering Council has put a requirement on all PEIs to conduct an annual survey of the CPD activities of all of their of a sample of all of their registrants. InstMC actually takes 5% of our registrants. Please don't be caught out. It does two things. One, it helps you to focus on what you want to do and how you're going to achieve it. It helps to focus your discussions with your employer in terms of what support they might actually be able to provide you to enable you to achieve what you want to achieve. And of course, if you're moving on, it shows your prospective employer that you are prepared and committed to make sure that your knowledge is current. CPD. Clearly, the definition is fairly standard. It's understood as a systematic acquisition of knowledge, skills, and development of personal qualities to maintain and enhance professional competence. How does it affect any one of us? Well, all active members at all grades of the InstMC have an obligation to maintain their competence through CPD and support the learning of others. All active registrants are obliged to record their CPD underpinning the value of the professional titles of EngTech, Incorporated Engineer and Chartered Engineer, as well as serving society and enabling it to have confidence in the engineering profession. There's been a debate what active means. And the definition that we've got is that active includes members and registrants who are also includes members and registrants who are retired, unemployed or on a career break, but they support InstMC and Engineering Council activities. And that can be as simple as providing mentoring support for the local section, someone you know, a family member. You have to maintain your competence that you are giving them to show that you are giving them the right advice. And although it's not a mandatory requirement, it's strongly recommended that retired but non-active and those registrants who are employed are unemployed but on a career break are able to demonstrate appropriate CPD. As I said, we have to complete an annual survey, and from the 1st of January this year, it's mandatory for all registrants to be able to provide a CPD record. And while there's no prescriptive format for your CPD record and plan, it must include those 5 key areas. What we see quite often is we'll get an overall planned objective. We'll get a planned objective and overall target. We'll get a list of activities that are planned and what have been achieved. But but a lot of us, perhaps in the past, have not listed down what we've learned, what we've achieved, and how that relates to our planned objectives. Those of us who are in regulated industries are perhaps in a slightly better position because our annual review with our employer, you sit down, you agree with what you've done, what you've achieved, where you want to go, what they can support, how they can support you, and you have a list of things that you're going to do in the next 12 months or 2 years. That's effectively a CPD plan. The fact that you review it on an annual basis, the fact that you have recorded that information in your annual review, you've got the wherewithal to produce a CPD plan. It needn't be complicated. It can be a single sheet of A4. So if you are actually included in the annual survey, it is not a huge task to produce that information. And the one thing I would say, if you are included in the annual survey, you only have to provide your CPD records for the previous calendar year. When we've actually run this trial, when we ran the trial in 2018, particularly less so when we ran it for the first time officially in 2019, one individual gave us 17 years of CPD, and there was a huge tome of it. What we were actually interested was the last page. It was about getting them to read and understand what had been asked for and extract the relevant information accordingly. This institute is not prescriptive about the content of your CPD. It will vary widely between what you might do at the beginning of your career might vary widely compared with what you do at the end of your career. Equally, you may actually move from a non-regulated industry to a regulated industry. You may choose to say 5 years from now, I don't want to be doing this anymore, I want to be doing that. And it's a complete change of path. So it will vary dramatically over your working life. And it's not about time spent or collecting points. And because there was a time, I guess, when if you attended a local section meeting and it was recorded, you got so many points. That's not what it's about anymore. It's about having a plan, deciding what you're going to do to achieve that plan, completing those activities, identify what you've learnt, and reflect on how that meets your target, your plan. One of the things that people have asked me is what should I do for CPD? Well, really the choice is yours. And those are some of the examples of what you might consider CPD. Personally, I'm retired and my CPD plan reads very simply. At the beginning of the year, I have a plan which says I'm going to support the Institute activities, particularly the activities of the Professional Registration Committee. What will I do in the year? I've no idea. So all I can do, because I don't know what's coming through, what I do is I write down all the activities that I'm likely to be involved with in any given year. Some things I will get right, some things I will get wrong, some things I will never have thought of. But that doesn't mean to say it's wrong. It gives me the opportunity to show that it develops as time goes on. At the end of, during the course of the year, I will do some or of those things, or even more things that I never thought of. And the benefit of doing any of those, some of it is for my own knowledge, understanding, and widening my knowledge of certain things. But most of it is to support the benefit, or is actually the benefit to the benefit of the Institute. And does it meet my overall plan? Well, of course it does. Because in my circumstances, it's a very ill-defined plan because the circumstances I'm in, I've completed those activities, I've learned certain things, I've achieved what I set out at. Others of you will have a very much more well-defined plan. And I'm told the older you get and the less, or rather the more senior you get, the less you are able to plan what you're going to be doing in the next 12 months, 2 years. The one thing to remember, though, is if you ignore to complete CPD and you ignore to maintain a proper record, it could threaten your standing as a qualified professional. I'll try and explain what is meant by that. Engineering Council have said that anyone who persistently fails to engage with or maintain an appropriate CPD activity risks the possibility of them being removed from the Engineering Council role. So they would lose their Engineering Council status. But what they haven't done is defined persistently and left it to each PEI to define it accordingly. Although I suspect in the next 2 or 3 years, we will get a definition from the Engineering Council, which is probably not that dissimilar from what the majority of PEIs are doing. This institute has adopted the policy of 3 strikes and potentially you are out. And what that means is that if you're included in the CPD the annual CPD survey, you are asked to provide a CPD record. If you fail to respond or fail to respond and don't give us a CPD record, you're automatically included in the survey the following year. And you keep being included until you either say, I'm not going to do it, full stop, or you decide that you don't really want to play this game anymore and decide you want to give up your Engineering Council registration. At that, if somebody persistently fails to provide such records, they do run the risk of the Institute taking the decision to advise the Engineering Council, and they will actually remove the individual from the register. I sincerely hope that we'll never go there, but time will tell. That actually completes the formal part of my presentation. I'm now open to questions.